Okay, so in this video I will be checking out the famous high-end thermal paste options from AliExpress. I'm sure many of you have heard about the famous GD900 thermal paste from AliExpress. I actually saw that paste for the first time in action in some thermal paste comparison video made by Tech Yes City or Brian Easy from Australia. And when I searched for more information about that particular thermal paste, I actually found out that there are a few other thermal paste options like that available on the market. So I actually purchased 4 tubes in total myself, like at the beginning of last month. So it actually took like 1.5 months for me to receive these thermal pastes. So it actually took quite a long time this time. Now I don't really trust many of those thermal paste comparison videos and reviews that I see on the internet. Sometimes the differences are just way too big. So especially if you compare thermal pastes on top of the CPU's IHS, like between the IHS and the cooling solution, no matter if it's a water block or an air cooler, the differences shouldn't be that big usually, especially if the thermal pastes are really very close to each other. Like what happened when I compared the high-end thermal paste options against each other, like in last September. The differences were extremely minimal between the Kimping Cooling KPX, the Cryonaut Extreme or the standard Cryonaut, and even to the working batch of GC Extreme. When there's a clear difference between two different thermal paste options, you can see the difference very, very quickly. Like what happened with the failure batch of GC Extreme, and when I compared the AlphaCool OEM thermal paste to the Kimping Cooling KPX like 2 years ago or something like this. Then there should be like a few degree difference, but in the high-end thermal paste comparison, the differences were so minimal that it was pretty much impossible to call a clear winner from the whole lot. But anyways, so I purchased 1 tube of the standard GD900 thermal grease. This has like 4.8 watt per meter Kelvin thermal conductivity rating, but of course those thermal conductivity ratings, they are always paper figures. I'm not really interested in them that much. For example, the Kimping Cooling KPX doesn't have a rating at all, and the GC Extreme has a rating of 8.5 watts per meter Kelvin. I think the standard Cryonaut is like 12 point something, and the Cryonaut Extreme was 16 or 17, something like this. But they don't have that much difference after all. Then I bought 2 tubes in total of the newer GD900-1. So this has a thermal conductivity rating of 6 watts per meter Kelvin. Should be like an improvement, or a newer version of the GD900. So I couldn't actually see any any proper test made with the GD900-1. I only saw some thermal paste comparison video, but it was Polish, and the results were they were interesting but kinda weird. In that video, the GD900-1 was actually beating the standard Cryonaut from Thermal Grizzly, so I really wanted to test these out myself. And the last one is the most expensive option of the whole lot. This is the GD007. So I think this has a thermal conductivity rating of 6.8 watts per meter Kelvin, and I think it was the most expensive tube of the whole lot. But all in all, these pastes are very cheap from AliExpress. The total cost of this whole pack was like $33. Each of these thermal pastes is 30 grams, and they only cost like between $4 and $10. But nowadays, or since like last month, if you live in the EU, like in Finland, you need to pay the value-added tax of your country on top of the original listing price. But of course, that's not a big deal. The price of these pastes is still very, very cheap, even with the value-added tax on top. So the gram price is extremely low, well below €1 per gram. So it's not bad at all. Like I think the standard GD900 is only like 4 or 5 euros now with the value-added tax for 30 grams. So that's extremely low amount of money for the thermal paste. So if it's good, then that's a damn good deal, because if you really use thermal paste a lot, like if you do multiple different mounts with some CPUs, or if you test CPUs a lot, then you can get good thermal paste for a very low amount of money if it happens to be good. So for the actual testing, I will be using the Z490 Dark Kingpin once again with the 10900K. So I will be using the same 5.2 GHz profile and pretty much the same test. So a few Cinebench runs and then half an hour in Prime 95. I will add the Kingpin cooling KPIs to the comparison list again, but of course I cannot add these pastes to the same graph because the whole cooling loop has changed a bit. I have changed like one radiator and removed one, so the results aren't comparable anymore. So it's best to just make a separate one with KPIs, as we already know the results what we got last time, so we don't have to add every single thermal paste to the same graph again, like Dryout Extreme, Standard Dryout, GC Extreme and so on. We just want to see how well or how close are these cheap thermal paste options to the Kingpin cooling KPIs to draw like a conclusion. If they do well, I could actually try one of these on LN2. So I think the overall winner will be either the GD007 or the GD900-1. But we will see. So now I will just get the test setup mounted and ready to go, and I might show you like a short peek of the actual test scenario. I still have to use the thermocouple probe to measure the ambient room temperature, as I don't have the equipment. I don't have the ways to measure the temperature of the actual loop itself, which is a minus in terms of accuracy, but I think it will be fine enough for this purpose. And then just measure the average value of the maximum core temperatures, and then just compare the average of the core maximums to the ambient room temperature. So I'll get going and I'll get back to you with the actual results. Okay, so the test setup is running now. So that's the Z490 Dark Kingpin motherboard from EVGA, the same 10900K CPU from Intel as last time, and those are 2 sticks of Kingston HyperX Predator Samsung B-Die memories over there. Pretty much the same custom water cooling loop as last time, but of course I've made some changes in the actual loop. So different radiator over there, different one over there, then some fan upgrades. So we just cannot add these results to the same graph what we did before in last September. So I'm sure you get what I mean. So we have to make an individual testing right now. So I'm starting with the standard GD900 as it's the lowest one of the whole lot, so 4.8 watts per meter Kelvin. Then the one after this will be the GD900-1, which is 6.0 watts, and the final result will be with the GD007, which is 6.8 watts per meter Kelvin. And after that one I will do the test run with the KPX. So currently I'm running Pro 95, the latest version without any AVX, so no AVX2 or even AVX1. I'm doing 3 Cinebench R15 runs, just like last time, and then one half-an-hour run in Pro 95 with each thermal paste. Not sure if I have the time to do 3 individual mounts, just like last time, because it really took me a few days to do the entire testing. It was a very slow and tedious process. So I'll see if even just one mount is enough to produce reliable enough results. So we'll see. But anyway, so 5.2 on the CPU, 1.3 volts with minus 25% load line calibration option. So the same exact settings as last time. This is the 5.2 GHz daily profile in the motherboard's BIOS. Memory 4800 CAS 18 and 4.8 on the cache. So if we just look at the average of the maximum core temperatures, it is somewhere around, I think that's somewhere around like 72 degrees at the moment. I think it's around 72 degrees. The test has been running like for 15 minutes right now, and I'm measuring the ambient room temperature with this K-type thermocouple probe, which is attached to the huge radiator. And currently the ambient room temperature is looking at 25.1 degrees. So the result at the moment, if the average of the core maximums is truly at 72, it's around 46 degrees as the delta temperature result between the average of the core maximums and the ambient room temperature. If we remember the results of my previous test from last September between Cryonaut Extreme, KPX, Cryonaut and GC Extreme, the result with the KPX, Cryonaut Extreme and Standard Cryonaut was around 45 degrees Celsius and GC Extreme was 46.1. So considering the price of this very cheap GD900, it is doing a very good result if it truly is. If it remains this performance until 30 minutes has passed, this is definitely a good result. So I mean, when considering the price of this thermal paste. So I'm very interested to see the final results of this whole test comparison. So definitely stay tuned for the actual results at the end. So yeah, so I will just let this to pass and I will then move to the second thermal paste. And I will just look at the results at the end, and if they seem reliable enough, I think I can make the whole conclusion based on just one mount. But I might do 3 individual mounts, but it will just take some time. So stay tuned for the actual results and we'll see what happens. And okay, it's time to move on to the actual results. So the results were actually pretty interesting. They were completely different what I expected. So if we just move on to the actual result graphs, I actually used the very same graph as in my high-end thermal paste comparison from last year, and what I also used when I made a revisit with the new batch of GC Extreme, what I received straight from Jelly Solutions. So definitely check out the high-end thermal paste comparison revisited version after this if you are interested in the high-end thermal pastes that are widely available, not just from AliExpress. But anyways, so in this graph we have the core maximums in R15 and in Pro 95, as well as the delta temperature results in R15 and in Pro 95. KPX is labeled with like light blue color, same as what it physically has. The standard GD900 is the lighter gray one, and the GD900-1 is the darker gray, and the GD007 is the orange colored column, the same as color on the tubing itself. And of course the core maximums, they don't matter at all because they are always tied to the ambient room temperature. So the real performance graph is in the delta temperature results. So on the left we have the delta temperature results in R15, and on the right we have the same results in Pro 95. If we look at the R15 results first, but of course R15 isn't the most reliable way to test thermal paste because it's a very quick test. Pro 95 is much more reliable because it actually takes a while, especially if you let it to run, let's say like 30 minutes or even longer. It allows the ambient room temperature to settle and the overall result seems a bit more reliable. I actually made 2 to 3 individual mounts per thermal paste. I made 3 individual mounts with the GD900-1 and the GD007, and just 2 mounts with the GD900 and Kimping Cooling KPX. The biggest surprise was in the standard GD900 as well as on the GD007. So if we look at the R15 results first, we have average of 6 runs with the Kimping Cooling KPX, 40.267 degrees. So between average of the maximum core temperatures and the ambient room temperature. The next result is with the standard GD900, 41.05. So that's like 0.75 degrees behind KPX. So very good result if you ask me. Then after that we have GD900-1 with a result. So this is the average of 9 runs, 42.52. So that's like a bit over 2 degrees behind KPX and 1.5 degrees behind the standard GD900. The GD007 was a very bad result overall. So the GD007 scored 45.8 degrees. So that's well over like 5 degrees or 5.5 degrees behind KPX and 4.7 or 4.8 degrees behind the standard GD900, and is that 3.3 degrees behind the GD900-1. So the GD007 was clearly behind all of the other thermal paste options. I could see it immediately when I started, let's say like R15 or PRA95. Even during the first seconds of PRA95, the GD007 was clearly a few degrees behind the other thermal paste options. And it was very weird because it was the highest end option, at least on paper, of these thermal pastes. In PRA95, pretty much the same story. So KPX scored 44.95. The standard GD900 scored 46.45, so that's like 1.5 degrees behind KPX. GD900-1 was much closer to the standard GD900 this time, so 46.766, so that's like 0.3 degrees behind the standard GD900. And the worst of the lot, GD007 scored 50.125, so this is the average of 3 mounts. So GD007 was around 5 degrees behind KPX, and is that like between 3.5 and 4 degrees behind GD900s. So yeah, so very weird results with the GD007. No damn idea why was it so bad. The interesting part about this test scenario was actually now I could finally see, did my upgrades in my custom water cooling loop change anything. So if we go back to my high-end thermal paste comparison video from last year, KPX scored 44.8 in the same test, so in PRA95, and now I got a score of 44.95 with exactly the same CPU, same mounting gear, same profile. So pretty much I didn't gain anything with my custom water cooling upgrades. So it tells me that I cannot make my custom water cooling loop any better than where it is right now. The only way for me to lower the CPU load temperatures is by lowering the ambient room temperature, but that was kind of expected anyways. The only thing that got me thinking with the GD007 was the lack of, is it timestamp or date stamp on the tubing itself. So the GD007, there's no production date mentioned at all on the tubing itself. So there's a net weight of 30 grams and there's nothing over here, so absolutely nothing. There's a lot more information on the packaging of the GD900 as well as on the packaging of GD900-1. So over here, if you look at the standard GD900, we have manufactured 20th of May 2021. So May 20th of this year. And the same thing goes for the GD900-1s. Both of the tubes are manufactured at the same time. So we have, 24th of June this year, so around midsummer of this year. And there's no mentioning of the production date at all on the GD007, and there's a marking that the shelf life of these pastes is 2 years, so 2 years from the production date. So it's possible that I faced the same situation with the GD007 as what I did with the 10 gram size jar of GC Extreme last year. So I thought about ordering another tube of GD007 but from a different store to see if I could check this out. So if I order a new tube and it's exactly the same, then we know it's just the whole thing in the whole product. So the GD007, even though it has the highest thermal conductivity rating on paper, it's not any better than GD900 and the 900-1, and it's actually behind those two thermal pastes. So it was a very interesting test. The GD900, the standard version of the GD900, is definitely amazing. The only difference, at least on paper, between the standard GD900 and the 900-1 is that the 900-1 is pretty much the same paste as the GD900, but it just contains some silver. So it should have theoretically a bit better thermal performance, but I didn't see anything. They are pretty much identical products, to be honest, when looking at the PRA95 graph. So the overall conclusion is that if you are someone who tests CPUs a lot, like for example me, this past week I have tested like 40 individual CPUs. For that kind of purpose, the GD900 is awesome because it doesn't cost anything at all really. Even with the value-added tax and shipping, it was like $5 point something for 30 grams. It is extremely cheap thermal paste. For heavy testing, the GD900 is definitely a good thing to get. But if you are someone like a normal user, so you let's say you build a custom PC from individual parts every 4 to 5 years. So you make, let's say, only one thermal paste application every 4 to 5 years. So you might just put thermal paste on your CPU and maybe replace the thermal paste on your graphics card. Then I wouldn't recommend the GD900 over something like the Kimping Cooling KPX or the GC Extreme or the Cryonaut and so on, because there you want something that's absolutely reliable and the best thing possible. So you want something that has the best possible performance and it will last for a very long time. Obviously, you don't have to buy the Cryonaut Extreme, the pink thermal paste, because you don't need 30 grams for just 1 or 2 applications. But something like the KPX or standard Cryonaut or the GC Extreme, I would get some of those. Now, some people were commenting on my previous thermal paste comparison videos that Cryonaut, the standard version, has had some issues at extremely high temperatures, like plus 80, plus 90, plus 100. I haven't seen those issues, so I'm not fully sure are they real, but it's not impossible. So some people were saying that Cryonaut loses performance at very high temperatures if they last for a very long time, like some laptops at plus 90 or so on, but not sure. But really, I'm sure you get what I mean. The GD900 looks good, but it might not have as long lifespan as something more known like KPX or the new Arctic Cooling MX5 or GC Extreme. Just get some of those if you really build your PC every 4 to 5 years. GD900 if you really test a lot of parts with different cooling methods and so on. So yeah, from here I will be ordering yet some more thermal paste from AliExpress. There are many other models remaining. The only sad thing that I now regret is that I didn't include the HY880 thermal paste from the other quite known manufacturer that sells thermal paste on AliExpress. I think Linus Tech Tips tested one of their thermal pastes on YouTube, was it HY600 or something like this. It was golden colored thermal paste, but I think the HY880 is the highest option from their lineup, so I will be ordering that one, another tube of GD007 and other models that I can find on AliExpress. I really want to test these out. It's quite fun. But yeah, so if you like to see this video, then please give me a thumbs up. I will put a link down in the description of this video where I purchased these pastes from. So definitely buy the GD900 if you see any use for this amount of thermal paste for a low amount of money. Very good performance. I was really surprised by the performance of the GD900. So thanks to Brian from Australia for making me to test these thermal pastes out myself. So check out the video made by Techies City and the Polish guy. But again, these thermal paste comparisons, they do vary quite a lot. Sometimes people get way too big differences between thermal paste models, and when I just compared, the results are actually quite small in the end. A few degree differences here and there if the thermal pastes truly differ a lot from each other, so just saying. But yeah, so if you like to see this comparison of the known thermal pastes from AliExpress, then please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And yeah, thanks for watching one of my videos once again, and I will see you on the next one.